want to first begin by establishing some fundamentals for digital video. This is funny enough, training that and a content that Mike put together going on 11 years ago now. There's a resource on our website under the technical resources section. It's called the Knowledge Center. And these are non-biased white papers written by Mike and, short reading, 3 to 5 pages, give you an understanding of some of the trends in our industry and really breaking things down so that it's easily digested by all. And in fact, this is probably when they first allowed me to start doing trainings at Key Digital, this digital video fundamentals. It comes from a white paper called How to Make a HDMI Plug and Play Instead of Plug and Pray. And so it comes from back at Infocom, probably in 2009-ish. We started maybe 2010. We released HDMI matrix switching, and we asked folks, hey, so I see you're kicking the tires on this. Is this going to be the year that you install HDMI matrix switching? And they said, well, HDMI is still plug and pray, not plug and play. So that's how we came up with this idea for the article. But we want to show you how we handle HDMI and all of the layers of HDMI, because HDMI is not like component video. It's not like analog video where you have video and audio separately. HDMI is all on one connection, and there are 3 different layers. So think of HDMI as a highway, and there's 3 lanes to that highway: TMDS, EDID, and HDCP. All right, so this is the alphabet soup that all of our sales guys know, all of our tech support people know, and if you could make sense out of this, you're going to be able to overcome any obstacles you may encounter in the field when you're installing, because we make reliable products, but the way we've delivered these products reliably is to help you overcome the obstacles. In digital video, you will still encounter obstacles and have to troubleshoot things and be able to collect the information of what the screen's doing and what the problem looks like in order to determine, is it a TMDS, EDID, or HDCP problem? So let's make dollars and cents of this alphabet soup, shall we? What is TMDS? Transition minimized differential signal. Don't worry about that though, okay? This is the video and audio layer of HDMI. So for those of you taking notes at home, if you're frantically scrambling to write down transition minimized differential signal, but really ultimately what is it? Video and audio. Now this right off the bat is what I was talking about a moment ago. Digital is different than analog. Video and audio are not separate in HDMI. They are together. So again, if HDMI is a 3-lane highway and you have TMDS being 1 lane, video and audio are 2 passengers in that car traveling that lane, right? Now, has this ever happened to you that you have had video arrive to the display but no audio? Well, if you were here in person, then I'm sure you'd be able to say, raise your hands, and a load of us would say, yes, this has happened to me before. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes people call and they say, I got an audio problem or I've got a HDMI problem. It's not. TMDS means that if video has arrived at the display, audio should as well. So if you are getting video but no audio, what might that be? The TMDS lane is there just fine. Something else affecting that. It may be EDID. Okay, we'll have more on TMDS as we look further at how we correct these issues. So EDID is extended display identification data, but again, layman's term, the handshake. EDID, we show in these examples here, comes from the monitor, the projector, and it's a file which tells the source, here's what I'm capable of supporting. And so, for example, over on the left-hand side here, if we have our DVD player, which is capable of outputting 4K, but the monitor is only 1080p, the display tells the source, hey, just give me 1080p and just give me 2-channel audio. Now, think of it as the video resolution and the audio formatting. Okay, video resolution, audio formatting. Of course, there's a lot more there, and which means there's a lot of potential for misreads, but think of it as the video and audio capabilities going from the display to the source. And so this display says, hey, give me 2-channel audio and give me 1080p, and then this source should be able to comply with that. And it's really a top-down list, and they're going to see where they can meet eye to eye to make sure you have a compatible video, image, and audio through the speakers. And it happens both on consumer side and professional products, so laptops, for example. Same exact sequence here happens. Okay, and so what might have happened in that issue where you have video and you have no audio? Well, I tell you, I could give you my own real world example. A customer calls up a few weeks back and says, I have a DirecTV H24, I've got video and I've got no audio. Okay, video looked fine. So we asked him about his connectivity. He had extenders in the middle, our X444S. It's a 4K extender with EDID control. And the EDID setting was at a setting, which we'll show you in more detail in a moment, 0, which meant that the 4K monitor that was in his system was giving a 4K handshake to that DirecTV H24 box. Now, you may not know this, but those DirecTV boxes, a lot of them are over a decade old now. And that satellite receiver had no idea what it meant when it was, it was in the handshake it was receiving, 4K, 18G. 444 chroma subsampling. It had no idea what any of that meant. And so that DirecTV box, it defaulted to its lowest common denominator, essentially, DVI, digital video interface, right? Which was the original digital video connectivity. It had video, it had no audio. So it received a handshake. It had no idea what to do with that. So it just said, let me give you something basic. Here's video and no audio. Now, what did we do as a solution? You'll see we have a dial, and we just changed the EDID rotary to a 1080p and 2-channel handshake, and that's what got the display up and running, video and audio. So again, we raised our hands earlier. You had video on the screen, but no audio. Here is a tool to overcome that product. In Key Digital Products, we'll teach you how to invoke that tool here shortly. Now, it brings us to the next layer of HDMI, HDCP. Now this is to a lot of folks the real 4-letter word of HDMI, the real gotcha type layer of HDMI. High bandwidth digital copyright protection. It's the copyright protection. So the display tells the source, hey, please give me 1080p 2-channel audio. The source says, okay, I could do that, but first, are you going to pirate this content? And the source must ask the display, are you going to pirate me? And the display responds saying, nope, here's my HDCP compliancy. And this is what's called a key exchange, Now, now we show it on the left-hand side, the consumer sources, and we don't show it on the right-hand side, the laptop computer. Now, every HDMI cable has the pin for HDCP. It's always there, but some content is not HDCP encrypted. What content is HDCP encrypted, which requires this key exchange, is Hollywood content. Content from studios should be encrypted with this high bandwidth digital copyright protection. And so some people call this Hollywood dudes causing problems, HDCP. Some folks might even change the D for other letters in that acronym or other words in that acronym. Hollywood dudes causing problems. It's only on the Hollywood content. Now, this laptop side, you don't have to necessarily worry about HDCP, okay? But this key exchange really created a gotcha for installers. This key exchange, it turns out, is software-based, and every source has a limited number of keys. Now, back in the day of $1,000 Blu-ray players, there was a number, 16 keys. Every HDMI source had 16 keys. Now, this was never published anywhere, but what does that mean, 16 keys? Well, that meant that if this Gen 1 Blu-ray player went through a generic black box splitter that had no handling of the keys, the HDCP handling and buffering as we do at Key Digital, as I'll show you, then this could work it out itself, this source. It could work out that it could go up to 16 HDCP compliant displays. They could each negotiate their keys one by one. But again, this was never publicized in owner's manuals or anything like that from the Blu-ray players. And back in the day, these Blu-ray players, and not just Blu-rays, I should say, all HDMI, HDCP sources. Back in the day, those DVD Blu-ray players were, they cost $1,000, right? Well, what do they cost nowadays? $50. And that race to zero has led to, of course, the elimination of some of the software requirements, because each and every one of these keys is a software license, okay? And so as the software, as the race to zero went on, what can you count on anymore? One key. And Apple was really the first notorious one key device. I remember back when iPad was brand new, folks had purchased the 30-pin to HDMI adapter from Apple, and they said, hey, this is great. I'm going to be able to show my content from my iPad across 1, 2, 3, 4 displays for art installations, for example. And they would turn on the first display, great, we have picture. And then they'd turn on the second display, and if they were using a generic black box type splitter, now you're playing a game of whack-a-mole. Has this ever happened to you before? Raise show of hands. Turn on one display, great. You turn on a second display, you lose picture on the first display. Back in the early generation HDMI distribution products from a lot of manufacturers out there, you might have seen that happen. You might have fallen victim to sort of that sort of behavior. And that's what's called a key problem, okay? So HDCP, think of it two ways again, copyright protection. And I should take a step back because this doesn't happen just once and done. This actually happens, I believe, on every 120-second interval. So every 2 minutes, you have to have this authentication occur. So that may lead to some problems with installations, as you guys may have seen. It may look good at one moment and then bad the next moment. We'll give some examples. Now, all of this may sound very mysterious to you, but I want you to know that actually HDMI wiring and connectivity and sequencing comes from a legacy foundation. When we open up the HDMI wire, has this ever happened to you? Once again, have you ever had an HDMI cable installed in the wall and your wire puller is really rough with the wire and they just break the head off of that HDMI cable? Okay, it's probably happened to all of us, right? Everybody's hands are going up. I could just envision it now. Well, if that's your only wire that you got there behind the wall, fret not. Inside of your HDMI cable, a bulk of the 19 pins is carried over 4 shielded twisted pairs. 4 shielded twisted pairs. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? So if I take this HDMI cable that I've cut off the head, Key Digital HDMI, there are additional wires, but here we see 4 individually shielded twisted pairs. So similar to like a Cat 7 or even some Cat 6A may have individually foil shielded pairs, which means if you've ever had that issue and you think, uh-oh, now I have to go ahead and install or I have to pull another wire, and man, that means I'm gonna have to cut a hole in the wallpaper, and that's expensive, or whatever it may be, you could typically just terminate these 4 shielded twisted pairs with the shielded Cat 6 connector. Why shielded Cat 6? Cat 6, it's wider grooves for you to slip the wiring through, because usually these are a little thicker. And B, when you have a shield here, you gotta, anytime you're using shielded Cat cable with Key Digital equipment, I'll say, anytime you're using shielded Cat cable, there's always going to be that metal drain wire, and you should make sure that you have proper metal-to-metal connectivity on both ends, both ends, both RJ45s, to make sure that that ground is properly handled from beginning to end. So a shielded Cat6, you can terminate this and make sure you have either solder your ground wire to the metal base of that RJ45, or a lot of them have a shortcut where you could just loop around that metal contact on the RJ45. So you actually have 4 shielded twisted pairs inside. There are additional wires, but that's where the TMDS data is carried. Your TMDS, again, your video and audio layer of the HDMI. Now, so it's a familiar medium that we're using to extend or to send HDMI on copper on 4 shielded twisted pairs plus a few extra wires, right? How about the sequence? Is this brand new? Is this so mysterious? No, it's actually, again, coming from legacy technology. We have the sequence of HDMI begins with the data processing, where you have basically during the initialization process, you have some inquiries about what is supported. You give hot plug detection first. So we talk about EDID, we talk about HDCP. Hot plug detection is actually the pulse, if you will. Imagine your DVD player at home is on all the time, but your TV is not. The DVD player is waiting for hot plug detection to come from the television, the HDMI sync device, and tell it, hey, you have a live partner here. Let's go ahead and begin now the EDID inquiry, or the EDID read from the display to the source, and HDCP inquiry. Hey, are you going to pirate this content? And actually, although I painted the picture previously that EDID and HDCP are 2 individual lanes of the highway, because that just works for the analogy, I'll have you know actually that they are actually, that data is going down the display data channel, DDC. So they're actually truly in the same lane on the highway. But we like to handle EDID and we like to handle HDCP individually for optimal performance and reliability. So the digital the display data channel, EDID, HDCP inquiry. Now, where did this come from? VGA. If you break down VGA, 15 pins, right, on that VGA connector, for those of us who have been doing videos since the days of analog. Now, you could also break that into 5 channels only, right? Red, green, blue, horizontal, and vertical sync. What were some of the remaining pins? Well, there's a number, but one of them was EDID. And the monitor would tell the computer, hey, please give me this resolution. Now, of course, in the VGA days, if the display did not detect the EDID from the monitor, it would just output something generic. But we even began to see, as digital video became more predominant, we even began to see some computers, if they didn't receive an EDID file from the monitor, because you're just doing RGB-HV, they wouldn't output signal. You began to see that in the late days of VGA. And so this is very, very important. And that's the foundation there, though, of course, is legacy functions and technology. Okay, now the source says, okay, I've received my HDCP authentication, and now the source is able to transmit the TMDS, the video and audio layer, over those 4 twisted pairs to the sync device, as the technical term for your monitor, projector, or television.